Is there a Mike Vrabel dictatorship in New England? We'll answer that question here on Pats Cast.
We are so back. Mike Vrabel's here, put the team on track. No entitlement.
Welcome to Pats Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Thank you for joining. Mike Vrabel was officially introduced at a press conference at Gillette Stadium today as the next Patriots head coach. Went to the podium, immediately took a jab at the Boston sports media, and I thought right away, we are so back. And yeah, it wasn't much of a jab. It was kind of a dumb joke talking about why the photographers won't put their cameras down and clap for him. Didn't really land, in all honesty, but I appreciate him taking the shot right off the bat because I want a head coach that's going to keep the Boston sports media on their toes and not try to be buddy-buddy with them. And Mike Vrabel is certainly that guy. So got off to a great start, even if the joke didn't really land. And I think the biggest takeaway there is you have a leader up there, a guy who's going to hold his players accountable. He spoke firm with conviction, talked about his coaching experience, not so much, playing under Bill Belichick or learning from Bill Belichick, but just talking about how he was brought up as a head coach and where he started in Ohio State and how he had a terrible interview there. They gave him a redo and talked about his work with Billy O'Brien in the Houston Texans and, of course, being a head coach in Tennessee and then working under Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland this past season as an offensive consultant. Really seemed to put his full experience there on display and talk about how he's going to work with the players and build relationships with them while still holding them accountable and really creating an atmosphere of mutual respect. And it really did feel like a grown-up is finally in the room, and it does seem like this team is finally turning things around. Seemed to hit rock bottom there a couple weeks ago after the 40-7 loss against the LA Chargers. Hopefully it's only up from here, but I think Mike Vrabel had an excellent introductory press conference, even if it wasn't the most entertaining and the jokes didn't land. But perhaps the most important quote that came out of today was, "We are removing entitlement from our football team. We're going to earn the right to be here every single day." So he's acknowledging that this past team under Gerard Mayo had a sense of entitlement, perhaps taking a shot at the Jelani Tavai, Jalen Polk, Javon Bakers of the roster, and letting them know, you're going to be held accountable here. And that was never the culture here with Bill Belichick. And certainly that's going to be stripped away with Mike Vrabel. Also said, we're going to ask our players to do a few things. One is to put the team first, to know what to do, and play fast and aggressive. And then he went into a little bit of detail, not so much schematically, but he said, we're going to play what works. We're going to write up schemes that works with the players that we have, whether that's running gaps, duos, zone schemes. He stressed they're going to focus on the things that the players do well in practice and double down on them. He said, quote, "Don't dabble on things like RPOs if the quarterback can't do it." Now, he's not saying here that Drake May can't do RPOs. I think Drake May probably be very effective at doing RPOs, and that perhaps will be a part of the offense. He's saying they won't force something, kind of like Alex Van Pelt did with the West Coast wide zone scheme that he was insistent on implementing all season long, running wide zone when it didn't work, and then running bootlegs when the teams are already stopping the wide zone, and they're like, that's not going to work because you couldn't even run the ball effectively. They're not going to do that. He's going to figure out what this team does well in practice and then reinforce all of their strengths so they have the best possible football team going out there on the field that isn't confused, that isn't lost, that he just doesn't have players standing around out there. And that's something that he really focused on throughout this presser, is that he wants the players to be thinking instinctively. He wants them to understand where the play is going, what they need to do, and not be overthinking. And I think that was a real issue this past season because they had a power run roster and were trying to run a wide zone scheme all season long. I'm not saying they're not going to incorporate inside zone or maybe even the wide zone, and a lot depends on who the offensive coordinator is that they're going to hire, but they're not going to be ideological under Mike Vrabel, and I think that's super important. And look, we all talk about, is Josh McDaniels going to come back? Is it going to be the same Brady offense again, and Drake May is just going to stand in the pocket the whole time? Even if that's the case and Josh McDaniels comes back, they're going to work with the players that they have, and that is one of McDaniels' strengths as well. So I was really glad to hear that he's not just going to take what they did in Tennessee and pigeonhole it into New England. He actually has a real quarterback now, and it's going to be fun to see what Mike Vrabel can do. And I think that was the biggest positive that I took from this press conference today. Vrabel also said they're going to essentially take their time in the coordinator coaching staff search. Didn't go into any specifics, obviously, on Josh McDaniels, Tommy Rees, or any of the potential offensive or even defensive coordinator names that have been floated out. There's a formal process they'll need to go through with the Rooney Rule and other requirements in a coordinator search. So Mike Vrabel certainly went out there and didn't give answers to questions that the media was looking for, because you don't want to give those answers right away before you've done a full head coach, full coordinator coaching search and filled out the rest of that coaching staff. There's a lot that they're going to have to do there. And, you know, whether it is McDaniels, maybe Vrabel has McDaniels in mind. From all the reports, it seems like he does. He's not going to say that at this point in time, at least until they go through the full interview process, similar to Robert Kraft last week. He wasn't going to say, we have our eyes on Mike Vrabel, when it was very clear they had their eyes on Mike Vrabel. But I think the biggest thing most Patriots fans are asking about, beyond who will be the next offensive and defensive coordinator at this point, is what will the front office look like now that Vrabel is the head coach? Well, we know Elliott Wolf is not going anywhere, and that was very clear at today's press conference. Second question out of the gate, I believe it was the second question, Mike Vrabel was asked, as a coach now, how would you describe what kind of players you want to wear the Patriot uniform to help you win as an organization? Mike Vrabel's response: Elliott's going to laugh. I'm going to say good ones. That's just an inside joke between him and I, already just over the weekend and through the interview process. It's clear, right, that Elliott Wolf was a requirement for Mike Vrabel taking this job. And we know the Crafts love Elliott Wolf. We know football people love Elliott Wolf. We just know Patriot fans do not love Elliott Wolf, because outside of Drake May and Joe Milton, last year's draft was not impressive. Free agency was a disaster. His starting left tackle quit on the team not even halfway through the first quarter of week 1 this year. It was a disaster, and rightly so. I think Elliott Wolf's feet should be held to the fire, but he has a dazzling reputation in football circles. I don't see it. A lot of people don't see it, and I'm just going off of what people are saying. And maybe it's worth Wolf keeping his job. 1, because he did draft Drake May, and 2, because he does have that reputation. He's implementing a new grading system that he didn't fully implement this past offseason. But it's clear that Vrabel was dropping Elliott Wolf's name throughout that press conference. He dropped his name more than anyone else, including the Crafts and his wife. It was back to Elliott Wolf. Elliott Wolf and I have an inside joke. He sent the message that they built a strong rapport already, and they already have inside jokes, and they're going to get lunch after this and do all these great things. I don't believe it. If I were in Vrabel's shoes, I would not be thrilled about the Elliott Wolf stuff. You know, can't tell you whether or not he is, but he's certainly paying lip service to it early on in a way that suggests, hey, I didn't get along with my last GM in Tennessee, but look, it's different here. Me and Elliott, we're buddies now. I'm going to work with him. He's going to be the de facto GM here, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it. Now, Vrabel was posed the question about who the final decision maker is going to be, who has the final say in personnel decisions, and he didn't answer the question, of course. He tiptoed around it wisely, because if there's any issue here about who's going to be the next GM, who's going to be the final decision maker, who's going to be the head executive, whether it is Elliott Wolf or some guy that Mike Vrabel likes, or if it's Mike Vrabel himself, that opens up a whole can of worms. We know Vrabel wanted to handpick his own GM, at least from a lot of reports that came out, and he wanted that guy to be Giants senior advisor Ryan Cowden. Well, 3 hours after the press conference, Albert Breer broke the news. Ryan Cowden has accepted a job with the Patriots. Cowden will have a big role in the New England front office. Title will be along the lines of Vice President of Player Personnel. He'll be the de facto number 2 to Elliott Wolf. Now, Elliott Wolf's title is Executive Vice President of Player Personnel. So on paper, Vrabel is the head coach, Elliott Wolf is the final decision maker, the de facto GM, and Vrabel's guy, Cowden, is Elliott Wolf's number 2. I don't think that's the reality of it. I really don't. And Greg Bedard, who was ahead of this like 3-4 weeks ago, says he expects Mike Vrabel to be the final decision maker. And Bedard reiterated that today, saying, quote, "I didn't hear anything today that pushes me off that I think that Mike's going to have the ultimate call on pretty much everything that goes on in the organization. I do have the feeling the Crafts were pushing Vrabel to keep the front office intact, at least most of it." So, will Mike Vrabel be the one who decides who the Patriots select at number 4 in the 2025 NFL Draft? It sure sounds like it. And that is a big change in culture. And look, I'm just going off of what Greg Bedard is saying, the fact that Mike Vrabel didn't make it clear on who the final decision maker was, the fact that Vrabel was able to bring in Cowden to work with Elliott Wolf. In all honesty, I don't think things are really that different from the way Bill Belichick controlled things when he was there. Patriots, they do not want to go through a formal general manager search. They don't want to deal with the Rooney Rule. They don't want to deal with all that stuff. Elliott Wolf is listed as the head executive with the league, and they're not going to change that. But Vrabel will seemingly have the final say just because those are the rules. And the Elliott Wolf is technically the one who's going to go to the podium after the draft, and he's the one who's going to make the final decision in the league's eyes. In reality, that's not what it's going to look like. Now, even if Vrabel were to have complete control as the executive in his title, just as Bill Belichick did, they would have to go through the full process. They would have to go through the Rooney Rule. They would have to go through all of that stuff. Patriots are skirting the rules again here, but I think the final outcome ultimately is going to be that Vrabel is in charge. The reason I think this, Vrabel name-dropping Elliott Wolf many times, and the one word that he did not mention, however, unlike last year's press conference with Gerard Mayo, was collaboration. And that leads me to believe that this is going to be a Mike Vrabel dictatorship in the same way that it was a Bill Belichick dictatorship. Remember, Elliott Wolf worked with Bill Belichick quite a bit. Matt Groh, as far as I know, is still there in the front office. Ryan Cowden going to play a huge role. But at the end of the day, who makes the final call? Look, we can pick between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Maybe that's what happens. Mike, who do you want? He's going to be the one that's going to make that choice. And in all honesty, I'm thrilled to see this. There were way too many cooks in the kitchen last year. Many breakdowns in communication as a result, not just with the coaching staff and the front office. Obviously, the front office was not thrilled with how Gerard Mayo and the coaching staff were able to develop players throughout the year beyond Drake May, and the breakdowns in communication with the coaching staff, with Gerard Mayo saying, hey, we're going to bench Ramondre Stevenson at the start of the game, tells the media that over the course of a couple days, doesn't relay it to Alex Van Pelt, who ends up starting Ramondre Stevenson. We're not going to see that. Let Mike run things and consult with the front office, consult with the coaching staff when appropriate. Now, is Mike Vrabel ready to have complete control of an organization? I mean, he's only been a head coach for 6 years. He's never been a general manager. I'm really not sure. But I think this is a scenario where Robert Kraft is just saying, give the job to the smartest person in the room and let them figure it out. And that's kind of what he did with Gerard Mayo last year. Obviously, it did not work out, but that's the risk you have to take as an executive. That's the risk you have to take as an owner. You have to identify talent and put them in a position where they're not comfortable in a role they've never been there before and say, look, this is a smart guy. There's going to be bumps on the way. He's going to have to figure it out. I'm watching the Red Sox Netflix series, about 4 months too late now, on the comeback against the Yankees and how they built up to that. And originally they wanted to hire Billy Beane as their general manager, and Theo Epstein worked under him. He was only 29 years old. Well, Billy Beane, it sounds like they had a deal in place. They popped champagne. They did all of that. But Billy Beane ultimately decided he didn't want to move away from Oakland. He didn't want to be 3,000 miles away from his family. So what did they do? They said, look, this Theo Epstein guy is smart. He's 29 years old. He has a legal background. He's worked throughout the front office in the MLB. He's going to have a lot of growing pains here, but this is one of the smartest guys we know. Let's put him in the role, and he's going to have to figure it out. It's sink or swim. Gerard Mayo, they said, look, Gerard Mayo, he's a smart guy. He's never been in a head coaching role, but we believe in him. He's going to have to figure it out. Now, the reason it didn't work was Gerard Mayo wasn't that smart of a guy. I got to be honest, he really was not. Now, he's smart. He's a midway. He's smart enough that he can put together a PowerPoint presentation and impress his bosses and really sound like he knows what he's talking about. And that gets you very far in this world. But that doesn't get you far enough where you can be a real leader, a real executive, a real decision maker, and achieve success. And that's why it ultimately didn't work out with Gerard Mayo. And hopefully he'll get some more coaching experience and get back to that point. But he's not at the point where this is a really smart guy. He can figure out a job that he knows nothing about. It's clear that didn't work out, and the inexperience happened there. Mike Vrabel, assuming I'm correct here, assuming Greg Bedard is correct, that at the end of the day, he's going to have the final say. He's going to be the de facto GM. He's going to control the front office as well as being the head coach. I think they're saying, Vrabel, he has plenty of coaching experience. He can identify the players that he likes. He's certainly going to collaborate with the front office quite a bit. I mean, no executive does this by themselves, but we trust him. He's smart, and he's the guy who's going to make the final decision here. And I think that's what's happening, and it's sink or swim for him. So it does worry me a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of this is, look, we're going to keep Elliott Wolf in the same position. We're going to have Cowden work under him. Vrabel's going to be the head coach. He's informally going to have the higher say, the final say, even if that's not in his title. But we'll see how it plays out this year. And then in a year, we'll reshuffle and we'll figure out what works best. If that means naming Mike Vrabel as the president of player personnel as well as the head coach, like we had with Bill Belichick, we'll do it. If Vrabel struggles, maybe we'll actually do a full GM search. Or maybe Cowden or Elliott Wolf really stands out and they can be elevated. Or maybe they get through the draft this year and then they do a full reshuffle. I mean, that's a lot of what this is you're not just going to completely reset the front office. No NFL team does that when they have a new head coach or even a new GM. You still got to keep the scouts around through the month of April, through the draft, so you're not losing all the homework that they've done this past year. Sounds like the Patriots, for the most part, are keeping the same front office, adding Cowden. Maybe they were moving a guy here or there, but they're just going to see how it works. But I think Mike Vrabel is not going to be Gerard Mayo. It's not going to be Elliott Wolf, I'm handing over this roster to you, Gerard. Do what you will with it. It is going to be Mike Vrabel making the final call on certain players. You know, Elliott Wolf, Matt Groh, Cowden, doing all the work, right? And going off of the profiles, the prototypes, the type of players that Mike Vrabel wants here that's gonna succeed in his system. But Vrabel's going to be the final decision maker there. And I think that's the right thing to do because we don't need all this time-wasting collaboration that's just going to bog things down and ultimately prevent the football team from winning games. But I could be wrong. Maybe Vrabel's just the head coach and he's not going to have the final say. Maybe I just wasted the last 10 minutes talking about it, but I don't know. Bedard was on top of the hiring. I'm even hearing guys, I think Tom Curran or Giardi, one of them might have also said they expect Mike Vrabel to be the final decision maker. But I think even if the titles don't match the roles entirely, I think we're back under the Bill Belichick system again, or at least close to it. Now, that doesn't mean Mike Vrabel is going to be Bill Belichick. Obviously, he has a different personality. I think he's going to be able to connect with players better, and he is going to have to rely on experienced front office members. Alonzo Highsmith is still there. He has lots of experience. He's going to have to rely on those guys to do the heavy lifting there, but he's not going to be siloed off with the coaching staff in the same way that Gerard Mayo kind of was. And hopefully that leads to better outcomes when all is said and done. But it is encouraging to see Mike Vrabel back there. Like I said, feels like we have a real grown-up in the room running things. The coordinator search is going to be fascinating over the next few weeks, potentially months. Like I said, Mike Vrabel seems to be the heavy favorite for offensive coordinator, with Tommy Rees at a distant second, but there's been lots of other names floated out there. I talked about it on the last podcast. Nick Caley, potentially Josh McCown, Chad O'Shea, who worked with the Patriots. I think he was a receivers coach. He's a guy that might be in consideration. Defensive coordinator, who the hell knows? Not as worried there because Mike Vrabel's there, and I think he's going to be able to focus on the defense very heavily because that is his background. But if he's going to do that, he needs a real guy that's going to be the head coach of the offense, kind of like Josh McDaniels was when Bill Belichick was here. And I would be surprised if it ultimately is not Josh McDaniels. But we'll have to see. We'll see how it plays out, but an exciting day. It seems like the Patriots are finally turning things around, but they got a ton of work to do. Mike Vrabel, really feel comfortable with him at the podium, and I from a PR standpoint, as a guy who works in comms and PR, his ability to not answer the question that's asked to him, chef's kiss. It's amazing. It's top notch. It isn't like Belichick where he's scoffing at reporters. Now, there's going to be some fantastic moments, entertaining moments with Mike Vrabel when he's pissed off after a loss this season, and I'm really looking forward to that. But he's not going to say something and then walk himself back in the next answer or the next day. He's going to think things through well in advance, and he's thought all of this through well in advance. He knows this team very well, clearly impressed the Crafts with his interview, and has clearly studied this roster and knows all the players inside and out. And, talking about we're going to strip away the sense of entitlement here, music to my ears, really glad to see it. I'm not saying this is going to be a Super Bowl team, but this is a team that I think, even with the current roster, you add in all the cap space and the high draft picks and all of that, but even with the current roster, I think this is a team with Mike Vrabel that should be able to win at least 3 to 4 more games than they did this past season, and you add some talent there, sky's the limit. So very excited to see it. Let me know what you thought of Mike Vrabel's press conference today if you're watching on YouTube. In the comments below, who would you like to see at the coordinator spots? Are you encouraged by Vrabel? Are you still pissed off that it's not Ben Johnson? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you throughout the week.
We are so back. Mike Vrabel's here, put the team on track. No entitlement, it's time to attack. On Cast, we're bringing the facts. Mike hit the stage, took a jab at the press. Earn your spot daily, don't settle for less. Running gaps, duos, zone schemes tight. Play fast, play hard, we'll get it right. Elliott Wolf's his got it's clear as day. Counting steps in there, paving the way. Final decisions, the jury's still out, but I'm